In the 1830s, a wealthy socialite named Ambrose adopts his cousin Philip after the boy loses both his parents. Ambrose raises Philip as his own son, despite advice from friends who insist the child needs a woman's presence in the home. But Ambrose is firm. Only the dogs, all female, are allowed to be the women of the house. Eventually, Philip leaves for the city to continue his studies, but it doesn't take long before he returns. He finds no joy in books and prefers the peaceful life at the estate. Unfortunately, Ambrose begins to grow old and ill. Upon examining him, the doctor recommends that he move to a warmer climate to improve his condition. Following the advice, Ambrose relocates to Florence. He keeps in touch with Philip through letters, which Philip often shares with his godfather Nick and Nick's daughter, Louise. One summer, Philip receives unexpected news. Ambrose has started a romantic relationship with their widowed cousin Rachel. It's quite surprising, considering Ambrose had never shown any interest in women before. By autumn, Ambrose and Rachel are married. Louise teases Philip, joking that he'll soon have to find his own place, but Philip tries to brush it off. He isn't worried at first. Ambrose seems to have forgotten the estate even exists. But soon, the letters begin to change. Ambrose writes that he can only send letters when Rachel is not watching, claiming she hovers over him constantly. He says Philip is the only person he can trust. Ambrose's health has taken a turn for the worse, and he suspects Rachel is behind it. He believes the doctor treating him, recommended by Rachel's shady friend Enrico, is being paid to lie to him. One particular letter includes a desperate plea for Philip to come to Florence and save him from his own wife. Philip rushes to Florence, but by the time he arrives, it's too late. Ambrose has died. The house is empty. The only one there is Enrico, whom Philip immediately confronts. Enrico explains that Ambrose died from a brain tumor, which supposedly affected his behavior and made him paranoid and aggressive. Rachel, meanwhile, vanished the day after the funeral, taking all of Ambrose's personal belongings. She has instructed that the house in Florence be sold. Enrico, acting as Rachel's lawyer, hands Philip a copy of the death certificate and extends a gesture of friendship on behalf of the family. But Philip doesn't believe a word of it. Convinced Rachel murdered Ambrose, he returns home, vowing revenge. Back at the estate, the servants and staff already see Philip as the new master. Nick checks Ambrose's will, which hasn't been updated in a decade, and confirms that there is no mention of a wife. This means the entire estate will legally become Philip's on his next birthday. Philip is surprised that Ambrose left nothing to Rachel. If she truly had planned to kill him for the inheritance, she gained nothing. But Nick thinks Philip is imagining things and overreacting. After speaking with the estate's employees and promising that their jobs and routines will remain unchanged, Philip receives word from the city. Rachel has arrived in England. He decides to invite her to stay at the house. However, he refuses to give her Ambrose's room. It now belongs to him. Instead, he prepares an old, dusty guest room for her. Louise helps him clean and arrange it. She offers to stay as emotional support, clearly having feelings for Philip, but while he appreciates her help, he insists on handling this alone. On the day of Rachel's arrival, Philip deliberately goes out riding, wanting her to wait for him. He even instructs the staff not to serve dinner until he returns. But when he gets back, he's surprised to find that all of Ambrose's belongings have already been moved into his room, and Rachel, exhausted, has taken her own room with all the dogs. She skips dinner, but invites Philip to visit her afterward. When he does, he's surprised again. Rachel is a beautiful, youthful woman. She seems startled when she first sees him because of how much he resembles Ambrose. The two begin talking, and Rachel surprises Philip in several ways. She knows how to make tea and biscuits. She remembers all the stories Ambrose told her about the estate, and she even makes him laugh with a joke. Philip finds himself charmed by her warmth and grace. But when the conversation takes an uncomfortable turn, Rachel quickly ends the visit and sends him on his way. Over the next several days, Philip and Rachel spend more and more time together. They ride horses together and show a mutual interest in the estate that Ambrose once cherished. One Sunday morning, after attending church, they have lunch with family and friends. During the meal, Louise becomes noticeably jealous of the growing closeness between Rachel and Philip. Later, Rachel teases Philip about it. He denies any romantic interest in Louise and admits that he actually prefers looking at Rachel. But she quickly shifts the conversation, saying she's running out of money and may need to teach Italian to bored housewives. Philip jokes darkly that widows can always pawn their wedding rings. This upsets Rachel, and she immediately leaves the room. Feeling guilty the next day, Philip goes to see Nick and asks him to arrange a monthly allowance for Rachel. He insists it's what Ambrose would have wanted. As he's leaving, Louise catches up to him and warns him that Rachel has already wrapped him around her finger. When he returns to the estate, he finds Rachel preparing a pot of special tea. It tastes awful, but she assures him it's good for his health. However, when Rachel learns that Philip has arranged an allowance for her, she becomes offended. To her, it feels humiliating, as if he sees her as someone who came begging for money. She insists she only wants to live independently and not be treated like a dependent. Philip calmly replies that she never begged, and, as Ambrose's heir, it's his responsibility to see that she's cared for. He doesn't want her to lower herself to teaching simply to get by. Later that night, Rachel skips dinner, but she sends Philip a note apologizing for her reaction. Touched, Philip visits her in her room, where she explains that she'll accept the allowance, but plans to find a home of her own. Philip finds this unacceptable and insists she belongs there, in Ambrose's house. After all, she was his wife. Rachel eventually gives in, agreeing to stay a little longer, and thanks Philip with a brief kiss before sending him on his way. Rachel continues to receive letters from Enrico, but Philip decides to ignore them for now. Meanwhile, Rachel begins to care for the sick workers on the estate with her special herbal tea, earning admiration from the staff. Inspired by her kindness, Philip begins trying to be a better man himself. During one of their afternoon rides, Philip brings Rachel the letter in which Ambrose accused her of tormenting him. But before she can read it, Philip tosses it into the fire. He confesses that he once hated her, truly believed she had killed Ambrose. But now he knows she's not the woman he imagined. Later, they finally dare to open the chests holding Ambrose's belongings, considering donating his clothes. But the memories are too much for Rachel, and she breaks down in tears. Philip comforts her, holding her gently. Wanting to make Rachel happy, Philip plans a few surprises. He cuts down a tree himself to decorate for Christmas and visits the bank to retrieve his late mother's pearl necklace, which hasn't been worn since her death. On Christmas Eve, Rachel wears the pearls, and this time, thanks Philip with a more meaningful kiss. They host a holiday celebration for everyone on the estate, complete with food, music, dancing, and a beautifully lit tree. Rachel surprises the staff with thoughtful gifts for each of them. The evening feels magical, but not everyone shares in the joy. After the party, Nick visits Philip with troubling news. Rachel has severely overdrawn her account and has been sending large sums of money out of the country. Philip refuses to believe anything sinister and insists that Rachel is simply generous. He even instructs Nick to increase her allowance, despite the concern. Nick, clearly frustrated, reveals more information he's uncovered. He explains that Rachel's first husband died in a duel fought over one of her lovers. It wasn't a secret. Everyone in town knew about her affair because they were loud, unashamed, and indiscreet. As Philip calls him out for believing gossip, Nick begins scolding him for having taken the necklace. But their argument is interrupted by Rachel. She gives the pearls back to Nick, expressing she's honored to have worn them, but she doesn't need to keep them if they'll cause such tension in the family. Philip insists everything, even the pearls, belongs to her. In response, Rachel reveals there was a will Ambrose had written but never signed. She shows it to Philip, who immediately recognizes Ambrose's handwriting. He wonders why Ambrose would begin drafting such a will and then not complete it. Rachel explains that she had been pregnant, but lost the child, and that their relationship began to unravel after that. Soon after, Ambrose became ill, and she felt like she was living with a stranger who despised her and wished her harm. Moved by her confession, Philip assures her that she'll always have a place on the estate. The following day, Philip brings the unsigned will to the bank, making preparations in advance of his birthday. Once he officially inherits, he intends to leave the majority of his wealth to Rachel. The banker warns that this is a hasty and risky move, but when he sees Philip won't change his mind, he at least convinces him to include a clause that reverts the inheritance back to Philip if Rachel ever remarries. On his way home, Philip picks up a bouquet of flowers, but when he arrives at the estate, he finds Enrico visiting Rachel. He watches, quietly seething, as they converse in Italian and frequently touch hands. Sensing Philip's jealousy, Rachel gently explains that Enrico is just an old friend. They simply have a lot to catch up on, and that he'll be leaving soon. When the new will is ready, Philip collects it from the bank along with all of his mother's jewelry. Because Philip is not yet of age, his guardian Nick must also sign the will. Despite believing this to be a terrible idea, Nick signs it after failing to talk Philip out of his decision. On the ride home, Philip chooses a narrow cliffside trail. The ground beneath his horse crumbles, nearly causing him to fall, but he manages to hold onto the edge and pull himself to safety. That night, as the clock approaches midnight, Philip sneaks up to Rachel's bedroom window, wanting to spend the first hours of his birthday with her. He gives her an envelope containing the will and presents her with his mother's jewelry, encouraging her to wear the pearls again. Shyly, he asks if he can stay the night with her. Rachel agrees. The next morning, Philip excitedly prepares a picnic for them, but finds Rachel has already left for the city. He waits for her by the roadside. When she returns, she explains that she went to visit Nick to have him clarify some of the legal wording in the will. She acknowledges that Nick was polite, though she's well aware that he doesn't approve of her. Philip takes Rachel to a wildflower meadow for their picnic. He persuades her to make love, yet afterward she seems remote and withdrawn. That evening, while Philip dresses for his birthday dinner, a servant brings up Rachel's special herbal tea. He drinks it eagerly. During the meal, a blinding headache strikes him, complete with unsettling flashes of light. Yet he steels himself and announces to the gathering that he intends to marry Rachel. Rachel, mortified, has no idea what he means and feels conspicuously shamed in front of everyone. Once Nick and Louise have gone, Rachel tells Philip the truth. She agreed to sleep with him twice only to thank him for the jewels and the will. She does not return his affection. Stung and bewildered, Philip grabs her, first by the arm and then by the throat. In the struggle, the pearl necklace snaps. The scattered pearls jolt him back to his senses, and he releases her. Next day, Louise sends word asking Philip to meet in private. Worried for him since before Christmas, she hears his confession. He thought Rachel loved him. He was wrong. Louise notes a striking pattern. Rachel was warm until she'd read the new will and cooled the moment Nick explained the remarriage clause. Philip counters that even if the estate reverted to him, he would still share everything with Rachel. Louise isn't soothed. She reminds him a wife cannot ship money abroad and is expected to remain by her husband's side, restrictions Rachel would hardly welcome. When Philip returns, he discovers Rachel with a female friend, now engaged as her lady-in-waiting because Rachel no longer feels safe alone with him. That night, Philip collapses in their presence. He remains unconscious for 5 days, plagued by headaches, fever, and strange visions. Rachel dismisses her companion and nurses him devotedly, giving him doses of her herbal tea. From time to time, she rides out alone. When Philip asks, she assures him she is not leaving permanently. Trying to occupy his mind, Philip later browses Ambrose's books and finds a note in Ambrose's hand complaining that Rachel is devouring his money at a frightening rate. Once strong enough, Philip secretly follows Rachel into town and sees her meet Enrico, who greets her with a quick kiss. That night, Philip confronts her. She admits she invited Enrico to England because she needs his counsel, though she won't say on what matter. Rachel explains she kept Enrico's visit quiet because she knows how much Philip loathes him, and his reaction proves her right. Philip, furious, demands she send Enrico away. Rachel refuses. She insists she has a right to her own friends and even suggests Enrico might stay at the estate. After all, this is my house as well. When Philip grows threatening, Rachel snatches up the fire iron, warning she will summon the servants if he comes any closer. Overcome, she breaks down in tears. Philip, ashamed, steps forward and gently embraces her. Some days later, a servant brings Philip a note he discovered in one of Ambrose's old coats that had been donated to him. Philip takes it straight to Louise, who reads it aloud. Ambrose suspected Rachel was poisoning him with her tea. He wrote that he'd been a fool but could do nothing, merely watch while Rachel took over the household. Stunned, Philip confesses he's been blind as well. Yet Rachel now holds court, hosting cheerful luncheons for relatives and neighbors. One afternoon, she prepares tea for Philip and Louise, carefully ensuring the cup intended for Philip stays by his place. Uneasy, Philip claims he isn't in the mood for tea. Rachel then announces she is going riding. Philip casually recommends the scenic cliff path, neglecting to mention his recent mishap there. Once Rachel departs, Philip and Louise search her rooms for answers. They find a bank letter thanking Rachel for returning the jewels. They will remain in the vault until Philip comes of age and reclaims them. They also discover a note from Enrico, urging Rachel not to abandon Philip, perhaps even to bring him to Italy, where the milder climate might restore his health. At this moment, Louise reveals something she has kept to herself. Nick's inquiries suggest Enrico is, in fact, gay. Overwhelmed with remorse, Philip dashes from the house, mounts the nearest horse, and gallops to the cliffs. He arrives too late. Rachel has fallen to her death. Years pass. Philip marries Louise, and they have 2 children. Yet Rachel never fully leaves his thoughts. Whether she was truly innocent or not remains a tormenting mystery, and the same splitting headaches that once plagued Ambrose now, at times, blind Philip as well.